Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. Today I'm going to be doing my 14.18 support tier list. So if you have content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. There weren't a huge amount of changes for the support role of this patch compared to the overall scope of this patch. We saw nerfs to Leona and Rel, obviously two mainstays in competitive at the moment. Didn't touch Nautilus, so I imagine he would definitely gain some kind of presence through these two being nerfed. On top of that, we also saw a nerf to Maokai, his champion. Albeit his most popular role is support, was primarily nerfed because of his jungle presence in competitive. I believe they just went after the wrong levers. They nerfed his E and nerfed his Q, rather than nerfing his Q monster damage, which would have meant that his other roles weren't touched, which he doesn't really have any presence in competitive. Albeit they nerfed his Q, they nerfed his E, two pretty core abilities in support. Maokai, this champion's pretty underpowered now. I think Riot's really missed the mark with this pick, but it'll be interesting to see if they ever change the direction they want to go with it. In Leona's case, obviously, 4 base armor, Rel lost some movement speed on her E. Max Rel was pretty popular and competitive. It was her main rank up. We also saw Hui get his shield slightly buffed, and it actually pushes him to be a viable support option. Not so much, I mean, it's still a bit niche, you're not going to see it that often, and it's more of a flex option if you really want to take into the support role, but it's no longer troll. You can definitely have strength on this pick in the support role. And then we also saw buffs towards Shen and Lulu. Shen buffs quite generous, he's in a pretty good spot in both top and support now, and Lulu's case for buffs are actually really good. Gaining some more damage on her passive just allows her to trade a bit better in lane. All very nice stuff. The D tier consists of the same 5 champions. We have Twitch, who at this point probably deserves to just be taken off the support tier list. Support Twitch was never going to be something which stayed long term. Its play patterns just too unhealthy for the game when it's strong, and then people, like, it's not particularly fun for the other 4 people on your team, and the other 5 people on the enemy team obviously aren't going to have particularly large amounts of fun playing into it. I'd rather they just gone with the Twitch jungle route. I really think Twitch jungle is probably a healthier spot for this champion to be in, rather than obviously like support Twitch, and even mid Twitch. I definitely think both of these could have been more like options for him. Maybe give him a bit more jungle monster damage on like either his passive or his E, or make it so his AP ratios are scaling, encouraging like mid AP Twitch. I think that'll be a healthier pattern for the champion. But yeah, support Twitch basically gone at this point. It wasn't gonna stay. MF also in a pretty grim spot for support. Obviously they did some tweaks like a while ago to her AP ratios on her E when lethality E max MF was really picking up. Wasn't really enough at the time. She's really underpowered in the support role. She does have an audience, which is kind of unfortunate because she is just so weak, and most of the audience is going to be like gold below. It's, yeah, unfortunate for the champion. Could probably do with a bit more of an AP ratio buff. I do think she has the kind of like budget for it, so it'd be interesting to see if they ever like add that into her. Ashe lost some base health this patch, which was already underperforming as a support option. They've nerfed her pretty aggressively for support at this point, so definitely not something I'd really recommend anymore. Malphite, pretty gimmicky pick. Obviously you're pairing with the likes of Yasuo, and you're just utilizing his R to find those angles. He can have decent harass in lane, and honestly he's better than the other 4 options here, the other one being obviously Veigar, but he's still pretty bad, so not something I'm really going to recommend. Yuumi is in my C tier. Honestly, the C tier in a pretty weird spot at the moment. There's only really 3 champions here. We have Yuumi, Renata, and Maokai now. So Maokai being brought down from the A tier to the C tier, pretty heavy nerfs this patch. He was also on the decline in the support role anyway, so he drops down to the C tier. Renata has been underpowered for a while. Obviously, her primary pairing for competitive is Kalista, who isn't great within solo queue for most people, so not doing too hot there. Obviously she can pair with some other attack speed orientated marksmen. She likes Jinx being back in the meta. She can definitely pair quite nicely with that one. But overall Renata, yeah, just a bit underpowered at the moment, albeit can't really be stronger because of her competitive presence, so in a bit of a weird spot for this champion. The 2 moving up are Swain and Hui. I've been kind of hesitant for moving Swain up in the support role for a while. I'm not a huge fan of this pick. I think he needs a bit too much gold to really be as valuable in the support role, and obviously both mid and APC Swain. I mean, Hui could honestly fit the same relatively similar bill. Yeah, both these champions need a bit too much gold income, which can kind of prohibit their strength in the support role. But they have definitive strengths. Like Swain is great into low range compositions. Hui actually has a pretty good amount of harass, and different tools for different situations, which can all be quite valuable. Honestly, Hui APC probably overpowered at the moment. I have him in my S or a high A tier in my like in my bot lane tier list. But I think if people sink the time into him, he's probably the most undervalued, overpowered pick at the moment. So yeah, sink time into bot lane Hwei. Could definitely be rewarded. If you're playing support Hwei, play it as more like a flex or a niche counter pick. Not something I'd really recommend defaulting on. Nautilus is in my B tier. Honestly, Nautilus is pretty close to the C tier at this point. He's been a bit on the weak side for Sudoku for a while. Honestly, he's a bit elite and competitive skewed, as are a lot of the engaged supports at the moment, because of, I mean, the accessible tools they have. They're low income, high CC supports, which is very valuable in competitive environments where you're not going to get as much gold. And like in Sudoku, where you're going to take the odd kill or two, you're going to have a bit more income. It's just not really that much more like valuable on them. Whereas on a like Enchanter, some of them have had pretty aggressively AP ratio, like had their AP ratio is pretty aggressively buffed. I think off the top of my head, we've got like Nami, we've got Milio, obviously 120% AP ratio on the Q is kind of absurd. And the shield more recently got buffed, so bunch of Sudoku skewed things there. Nautilus definitely a bit on the decline at the moment. And same goes for Khan. He's been in this boat for a bit as well now. Alistar, also pretty similar. Warmog's being nerfed, also did hit these champions. Zeke's is still a fine option, but both of them took a bit of a hit from the nerfs. Pyke obviously got nerfed in 14.16 or 17, can't remember off the top of my head, which he lost some power off of, but it drops him from like an A tier to like a B tier pick. Obviously very reliant on snowballing, tends to be a bit more elite skewed, and if you can pilot this pick well, he's still very good. Like he can definitely like jump and like compete against some of the S and S plus options of being like Senna, for example. Pyke's great in that matchup. Bard has been a bit underpowered for a while now. I know there's a lot of frustration around this champion because obviously he has a very powerful ult, which can be very much used against his team. Fresh also a bit underpowered at the moment. They got close to the point where Fresh was actually a decent solo Q option, but then they nerfed the CD return on the Q, and that kind of pushed him back down again. It would be nice to see Fresh get buffed, because I think this champion is healthy and competitive when it's not like Lantern bot, more about like his hooks and being like this map moving like hook champion. I think that's very valuable and competitive and can be quite like visually good to see. Overall bit on the weak side at the moment. Also tends to be a bit like less popular when the likes of Aphelios aren't meta, and he's pretty bad. Like Aphelios is arguably balanced for solo queue, and I don't see him getting buffs anytime soon. Nico also might be tier. I know a lot of people think Nico's support is better than mid lane Nico, and honestly it might be like there's different arguments of like where Nico's real strengths lie. I mean, obviously her snare is very aggressive, and combined with her early game being quite powerful, obviously it very much encourages support Nico. Combined with like her W can also be very valuable. So there's definitely reasons for it, but then you're getting less gold income, getting less XP, which does hurt your ability to like obviously trade and then look for these carry potentials later on for the game. But still pretty solid pick. If you pilot it well, definitely can get value out of it. Kind of akin to Pyke, but not as elite skewed. Pantheon, better as a support option than he has been in the past, but then can kind of struggle if he's not like ahead of the curve. Obviously, Pantheon, very early game skewed champion. If you fall behind, this pick can feel really useless in most situations, so you just have to be cognitive of that. Teemo, very underrated support pick, and very underrated jungle pick, honestly. Like, Teemo, jungle, and support, pretty good spots at the moment. And there's definitely more people kind of catching on to just how good both these options are. I mean, the blind tends to be pretty core against like certain support matchups, so it's not something you can really blind in most situations, but if you find the angle for it, can be quite valuable. Definitely something to consider. Obviously tends to be a bit more mid and low elo skewed though. Heimerdinger is the other champion which I'm considering removing. He's just very unpopular generalistically, whereas Twitch is pretty bad. Heimerdinger is pretty unpopular, and I mean, Twitch is bad unpopular. Heimerdinger is just unpopular. This champion obviously sees playing mid and top, and he's pretty good in both those roles. Like, the item system's not too bad for him at the moment, but in the support role where they kind of push towards more level scaling and more gold scaling, he's just not doing as well at the moment, and like he tends to be pretty much paired with like Ash lanes. Obviously, we all remember DRX 2022, and like Beryl playing Heimerdinger as his core champion. I think Heimerdinger got pretty quickly taken down as a support option, which was kind of unfortunate because I think he's quite interesting to have as a support pick. And he was pretty popular for a brief period of time, which, I mean, obviously Heimerdinger as a champion historically has just not been particularly popular. So kind of unfortunate, but yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling. Heimerdinger within my beta. Morgana is also in my beta. Her unreliability really prohibits her from being higher, plus the fact that she kind of has a useless ability in the W. The Q, if you like have follow-up CC, very valuable. And we are kind of misaligned with her kit. Black Shield can have value. But yeah, this champion's just a bit of a mess at the moment, so she sits within my B tier. Blitzcrank also pretty close to the C tier. He's definitely struggling a lot more at the moment. Like, Blitzcrank is, I would say, too weak in his current state. He should feel good to play, like, especially if like you're someone who doesn't play support and maybe you're auto and like, oh, I want to play Blitzcrank because he can provide value to the team as like a hook champion. But then he's a bit squishy at the moment. Like, they've taken a lot of durability away from him through like the passive shield, his base armor, his base health. All these things have kind of been nerfed, and it's just left him in a bit of a weaker spot at the moment. So I'd like to see some Blitzcrank buffs. Obviously he's very frustrating to play against, so I could understand why a lot of people wouldn't. But he kind of sits towards the low end of my B tier at the moment. Amumu, very niche pick. Obviously really benefited like previously when even Shard was in the game, and then to an extent Radiant Virtue. But at the moment, he just doesn't have a great itemization for him. Zeke's can work, and Mumu's kind of held up by his strength in the jungle, and like his strength just generalistically, which is why he sits as like a high B tier option. But there's like a genuine argument that he could just be removed because it's not very popular. Camille is a bit more popular. Obviously, this champion can be very oppressive with like the E start Healer Blades, but then can quite quickly become redundant into like certain pairings, or if she hasn't got enough gold to really get her items online, she can definitely struggle in those situations. But overall, she's still a pretty good support pick. Like, I'd say she's close to the A tier, like a high B tier option at the moment. Karma. If you fall behind, this champion feels really useless. That is just the main takeaway. If you used your early game oppressiveness, convert that into value, like through turrets, through like platings, through getting a gold lead on your ADC, then this champion can feel quite good to play. Can do decent damage as well. If you ever fall behind, it's just not going to be very valuable. That is the main problem with Karma. They've kind of eased her into her like E second max, where the shield can feel a bit more valuable. It was horrible previously, so the only way was up in a way. But she still definitely struggles later on into the game. There's no doubt about that. Sylas. So Sylas is going to be with my A tier. He is a new addition. He's been gaining popularity in the support role for a while. I've kind of been just like watching it slowly like creep up with some of the changes he received, like encouraging more healthy orientated builds. You could definitely argue there's like actual value to having Sylas support, and he is with my A tier, so I to an extent agree that he is decent as a support option, but he's a bit more reliant on being a counter pick if you can get 2 good ultimates in the bot lane. But this champion is pretty good, and combined with obviously his damage being decent, he's more durable. You can definitely have carry potential on this pick as well. So yeah, I think Sylas support kind of stepped on, albeit niche in his current state, so sits as like a lower A tier option. Boom. Great as a counter pick. If you're blind this champion and when you're playing into Enchanter, he kind of sucks, so it really prohibits him from being like an S plus option. When Nautilus and like other hook champions and like other engage options really dominated the solo queue meta, he was really valuable. So he was, I think I had him in my S tier for a while, but these champions have kind of sunk back down. They've nerfed them, so yeah, he drops down to my low A tier at the moment. I could honestly probably drop down to the B tier soon. Rel got nerfed this patch, didn't really do anything. It was primarily towards pro play, the Emax nerf there. In solo queue, I believe it's still her 3rd max at the moment, which obviously it shouldn't have been. It should have been Emax like competitive, but yeah, W max probably just mainstays as like her main thing now, so Rel sits as like a low A tier option. Not much movement there. Fiddlesticks, niche but underrated but niche pick. That's just kind of a TLDR of this champion. He's a great, like a really valuable ultimate, and also really powerful tools within his kit. A silence, a fear. Both these can be really strong if used appropriately. He does decent damage. Obviously, he tends to be a bit more reliant on gold, kind of akin to the likes of Swain and Hui. But the amount of value like this champion's kit has through CC just kind of gives him a slight edge, I'd say, over these two champions. Zillion isn't doing as well at the moment as like he has done in the past. He's probably in one of his weaker states of like the last 4 years, but he's still decent. Obviously his like tools are really valuable, and that like really prohibits him from being down a couple of tiers. The speed ups, the CC, the raw damage of his Q, like it's really aggressive damage per point up. And yeah, it just enables him to be pretty prevalent at any stage of the game, combined with the ultimate, which is also a very valuable tool. Tahm Kench. I played Tahm Kench in in-houses as a support. I won all 3 games against like Grandmaster players, which is kind of crazy to think about because I'm a top laner, so it made sense that I was playing Tahm Kench. I was also just playing Grasped Heartsteel Tahm Kench, which I do think is just correct generalistically for this champion in the support role. Like, don't go Guardian, don't go like support items, just go normal Tahm Kench, and you should be good to go. I think this is the case for like actually a couple of champions, for likes of Shen, Zac, Galio, in a way, all follow suit. Galio's a bit different. Galio, you kind of actually just want to go like Warmogs or like some of the more supportive options, so he probably sits towards the lower side of these things. But all 3 of these champions in a great spot for the support role at the moment. They're actually pretty underrated, and all of them are underpicked at the moment. Tahm Kench. Previously, I hated him, obviously, because most people just played for his ultimate, and that was how you played support Tahm Kench. But, like, at the moment, as Heartsteel is also just not a mythic, because mythics don't exist anymore, it's actually pretty good as a rush option here. So, Tahm Kench, don't sleep on him. I think he's pretty good. Combined with Shen on top of this, with, like, the buffs he received, Shen's also a really good support option. So, both these picks, don't sleep on them. They sit as high tier options, in my opinion. Sona has gradually been falling down. This pick definitely can feel quite frustrating to play against. Obviously, that's one of the main things with Sona, but she has good pairings. If you can utilize her the damage on her Q, or the like rotating between the shielding and the healing, so she can get double stacks, and then the Eve movement speed to traverse them up, she can be valuable within the game, and she definitely sits still as like a mid-high tier A tier option. But she can feel really punishing to play against like hook champions if you're ever like falling behind and an enemy team snowballing. She doesn't scale quite as aggressively. She's more of a mid-game champion. Like, once you have all your stacks, your 60 stacks, and like you're getting the CD on the ultimate, and you're like playing around just perma spam ultimates, then she can be quite valuable in those mid-game situations. And she still is valuable later on. She just isn't quite as aggressive scaling as some of the other options here. She can but she still does obviously scale decently well. Like, don't get me wrong. Her main weakness is obviously her early game pre-first item, where you don't really have the mana to support just perma rotations. I'd say that's probably where her biggest weaknesses lie. Surfing got nerfed. Obviously, she was doing very well for a while, and yeah, they brought her down slightly. She sits as a solid A tier option. Still great enchanter, great tools. The E being a slow snare and a stun. Her R being one of the most powerful ultimates in the game. Also very strong on like her kit she has. Her W is her main supportive output. And yeah, she's in a pretty good spot at the moment. Lux, pretty underrated. I mean, I say she's underrated. She's like the most popular support in the game. But I think people just sleep on actually just how strong Lux is as a champion. Like, she's not a bad bot laner. She's pretty good mid laner. She's a pretty good support. And overall, it gives her flexibility as well. So I think she flies kind of under the radar in that regard. Obviously, she's still very popular in both mid and support, like top 5 mid. And I think she's just the premier pick in the support role. So it's not like underrated in play rate, but I think, yeah, she's kind of undervalued. She definitely sits as like a high 8 option. Soraka, she's fine. Like, she's definitely been stronger in the past. Like, obviously, we all remember Soraka healing everyone to full HP just off W, and then they pretty aggressively nerfed that ability, but they kind of it was mainly because it was over healing people, and yeah, nowadays she still heals a lot, and she's still very valuable, like of an addition to certain team compositions, but she's not as egregious as she has been in the past, which kind of prohibits her from moving up to the S tier. Shaco is a really underrated support pick, has been for a while. I think this champion is actually really good, like AP wise, and kind of stepped on him jungle. I know lots of people hate AP Shaco jungle and think, this pick's useless, but the control it has, the damage it has, the scaling it has, it can be really hard to really approach objectives, and I kind of prefer it because obviously AD Shaco is very much reliant on early game snowballing, and if it ever isn't snowballing, then it just looks useless, whereas it's the vice versa with AP Shaco. So I think this champion definitely has some kind of problems with it. Obviously, in the support role, I'd say that's where it's not as visible. Like, you play as like an early game E harass bot, and then you use your traps to avoid ganks, control Drake timings, which is still a very valuable tool to have, but he still scales really aggressively here. So Shaco, very deserving of a high A tier spot at the moment. LeBlanc, also a very high A tier champion. I think people have kind of caught on to support LeBlanc actually being a very strong pick. I moved it down when she got nerfed in 14.17, the 5% AP ratio of Q and the 5% AP ratio of W kind of just drops it down slightly for me, but I would say she's still a very high A tier option. And honestly, with the Storm Surge and the Shadow Flame buffs this patch, there's probably an argument to just move her back up to the S tier. I'm not too locked on her being like an A tier pick, and if you're very confident on LeBlanc, you know you can snowball, yeah, she deserves to probably be in the S tier. The other pick here, we have Vel'Koz, who probably sinks down towards like a mid A tier option. He's a great support option, and when they buffed his true damage on the passive, the AP ratio, and the flat damage, it definitely helped him like solidify his spot as being a really good harass option in the support role. He also has pretty solid burst damage, so don't sleep on that. Dropping down, we have Leona, who got nerfed this patch. She lost 4 base armor, and it kind of just dropped. Like, she was already a low S tier pick, and the nerfs this patch just dropped her down to the A tier. She sits as like a mid to low A tier option, kind of like next to Rel, I'd say. Tarek, I'm gonna actually drop down from the S tier. I've had him in the S tier for a while, but the problem with this pick is he's just too kept by the combos he's reliant on. You're not really going to see him outside of like Tarek, Nyla. As a standalone, he's a bit weaker. Obviously, his dueling potential is still great, and like if you're picking him into heavy AD compositions where you can make use of his armor ratios, he could still be very valuable, and like also into like heavy dive as well. So there's definitely value there, but I think he just isn't quite S tier anymore, so I'm going to drop him down. And Brand is also going to get dropped down. He's just been nerfed a couple of times, primarily because of his jungle strength, and I'd say it drops him from like a low S tier to like a high A tier, but he's still very good, and I'd put him like around the high A tier still. The S tier champion, so we're going to move Xerath up. I've been wanting to move Xerath up for a while. I think he's a really good champion, just both in mid and in the bot lane. Being able to really utilize his ultimate being a bit more powerful, combined with the amount of damage he just has accessible to him, and then mana problems just not really being as much of a problem in the support role, because obviously you get some of that through the support item. I think this champion's in a really strong spot at the moment, and yeah, it definitely gives you a lot more range, a lot more push potential, a lot of damage, get level of carry potential, which can be quite valuable if you want to climb with support consistently. And yeah, overall, Xerath, solid S tier option. Lulu also moves up to my S tier. The buffs to her passive this patch push her up as like a low S tier option. Obviously she's kind of bad with some of the champions which were in the meta last patch, the Jins, the MFs. Obviously Jin is now the premier marksman pick, which she's still pretty bad with, so I wouldn't really recommend that as your pairing. But pairing her with the likes of Jinx, very strong, alongside a lot of the other hyper carries. That is mainly what she wants to be with. Cogmore, pretty strong at the moment, and she can pair really nicely with that. So Lulu, yeah, moves up as like a low S tier option. Then we have 6 champions left here. So we have Janna, who is still within my S tier. She's been in my S tier for a long time at this point. Her peeling tools are very valuable. Her enchanter outputs are also very powerful, combined with the harass on the W. Whether you're running like Zax or Dreammaker, both of these can be quite valuable in different situations. And then, yeah, her are very valuable too, very deserving of an S tier spot. Milio got buffed not too long ago. He has really aggressive AP ratios. If you ever find yourself picking up some early kills on Milio, this champion can hit like a truck in situations, so don't sleep on that. There's definitely value to this kind of a pick, especially with the E also having a bit more of an aggressive AP ratio on it. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of potential in Milio, combined with like Echoes of Helia as well on the W interaction. That is also very powerful if you're like able to chain it nicely with your ADC. So Milio, very deserving of an S tier spot. Zyra probably sinks down to the low S tier. She's the closest thing to the A tier now. She's obviously been slightly nerfed, like indirectly or directly through like jungle nerfs, and then before that she got nerfed directly for support role. Overall, it's just meant that she's not quite as like high S tier anymore, but she still does a lot of damage. Her plants are very valuable tools. Her CC is also very valuable and has decent range to it. But she's just not quite an S tier option. She's lost a bit of her damage over time. Nami, very high S tier option. She is probably the closest contender of the S plus tier. Obviously she tends to synergize better with certain pairings, whether it's like your Lucians or your Brands. She can function obviously quite nicely with Jhin as well, and there are other champions which she works with, but overall, like the general roster of ADC she does just function well with. So very deserving of a high S tier spot, and her AP ratios are good, her base values are pretty decent, her enchanter outputs are very good, and her E is still a very valuable tool. So yeah, Nami, very deserving of a high S tier spot. And then my two S plus champions, obviously Poppy has really been popularized at this point, and I wouldn't be surprised if she gets nerfed if she continues to be strong going into next split. At the moment though, she is the premier support pick, which I'd recommend, especially if you can utilize her as like a flex counter pick option. In Senna's case, she has great itemization accessible to her. The changes they made for her to be more accessible to use Cleaver and like her Echoes of Helia build, both these are very good. I would recommend going Cleaver in most situations since it gives you a bit more durability and your damage is still pretty high when you're going that route, and then going into an enchanter build that looks to be pretty strong on her at the moment. And overall, yeah, she's really benefiting from the changes she received back in 14.15, I want to say. So yeah, Senna, great option at the moment. Has a level of carry potential if you're going like a Cleaver variant. Otherwise, she's reliant on her support output, but she's got, they're pretty good at the moment. So yeah, very deserving of S plus sport. And those are my thoughts. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.